Hey everyone, welcome back to another deep dive.
Yeah.
Today we're looking into something called the Easy DIY Power Plan.
Okay.
And this is a system that promises a lot in terms of energy independence. We got this from one of our listeners.
Mm-hmm.
They sent us a review,
Mm-hmm.
and we wanted to kind of go through it with you all and see if these promises are achievable or if it's all hype.
Yeah, I think this plan is really interesting because it speaks to a desire that a lot of people have to take control of their energy costs.
Right. Yeah.
But looking at this review, there are some red flags about the plan that jump out right away.
Oh, wow. Okay. When you say red flags, what are we talking about here?
Well, the review mentions that there's a lot of exaggeration and a lack of transparency about what's actually involved in building this system.
Okay.
For example, they market it as easy enough for anyone to build with stuff you can just find at your local hardware store. But the feedback from people who have actually tried to build it tells a very different story.
So easy might be a bit of a stretch.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And one specific example they point to is the issue of solid-state relays.
Okay.
Now, these are essential components of the plan. They're electronic switches, and they're marketed as being super easy to find. But people who've tried to build this are saying that they're really hard to come by.
Wow. So that sounds like it could lead to some frustration and some unexpected costs, too.
Exactly. And that's just the beginning. When you look at the core design of the system, that's where things get even more interesting and potentially problematic.
Yeah.
The whole plan revolves around a generator and alternator combo that's supposed to create this self-sustaining energy loop.
Okay.
But what the review found is that there are significant energy losses in the system, which means it can't actually sustain itself, and it might not save you money on your energy bills after all.
So wait, are you saying that this plan could actually lead to higher energy bills instead of lower ones?
That's what the review suggests.
Yeah.
And it comes down to this idea of perpetual motion, which is what the plan seems to be based on.
Sure.
But as we know from physics, perpetual motion is impossible.
Energy can be converted from one form to another, but some energy is always lost, usually as heat.
Yeah.
And that's what's happening with this generator and alternator setup. It's just not as efficient as they claim it to be.
So it seems like the marketing is promising something that just can't be delivered based on the laws of physics.
Right. And that's why it's so important to be skeptical and do your research before jumping into any DIY project like this. You don't want to waste your time and money on something that's not going to work.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm curious about those people who have tried to build this system. What are they saying about their experiences?
Well, the review highlighted the importance of community feedback and hands-on experimentation.
Okay.
Even though some people were frustrated with the shortcomings of the plan, others were actually sharing their own insights and adaptations that they had come up with to make it work better.
That's really cool. It's like a community effort to try to improve on the original design.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just about making it more efficient, it's also about safety. The review really emphasizes how important it is to follow safety protocols, especially when you're working with electricity.
Right. Safety always comes first.
Yeah, things like proper wiring, component placement, and regular maintenance are essential to make sure that the system is safe
Yeah.
and to prevent any hazards like fires or exposure to harmful fumes.
Yeah, you definitely don't want to cut corners when it comes to safety, especially with a project like this.
And speaking of cutting corners, it sounds like you need more than just basic DIY skills to tackle this project.
What do you mean?
Well, a lot of the materials you need are readily available at hardware stores, which is great.
Okay.
But remember those solid-state relays we talked about earlier?
Right.
Those might require a bit more specialized sourcing, and you might need to get creative to find them.
So maybe easy isn't the best word to describe this DIY project?
Well, resourceful might be a better fit.
That's funny. You know, that reminds me of a time when I was working on a DIY project, and I had to get pretty creative with sourcing materials.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was. It was for a little backyard project I was building, and I needed some specific kind of brackets,
Yeah.
but I just couldn't find them anywhere,
Yeah.
locally at least.
Yeah.
So I ended up having to order them online from some specialty store, and it took like weeks for them to arrive.
Oh, man, that's a bummer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. Sometimes the sourcing can be the trickiest part of a DIY project.
It really can. And it definitely throws a wrench in the easy part of the plan.
Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
But, even with those challenges, it sounds like you were still able to make it work.
Oh, yeah, totally. I mean, it wouldn't have been my first choice to wait that long, but it was worth it in the end.
That's what I think is so important to keep in mind with this easy DIY power plan. It might not be as straightforward as they make it sound, but with a little resourcefulness and a willingness to adapt, it's possible to overcome those challenges.
That's a great point. And speaking of resourcefulness, The review also mentioned that some people have found ways to modify the plan to actually improve its efficiency.
Yeah, I saw that too. It seems like some folks have figured out how to address some of those energy loss concerns we talked about.
Really, so even with its flaws, there's still potential in this plan if you're willing to put in the extra effort.
Yeah, I think so. It's not about saying this plan is completely useless or anything. It's about providing people with the information they need to make an informed decision.
Exactly. We're not here to tell people what to do. We just want to give them the tools and knowledge to make their own choices.
Right. And that brings us to a really important question. What are the key takeaways for anyone considering this plan or any other DIY energy solution?
Okay, yeah. What would you say are the most important things to keep in mind?
Well, first and foremost, skepticism is crucial. Don't just take their word for it. Do your own research, look for independent reviews, and be realistic about what to expect.
Don't believe the hype.
Exactly. And second, be honest with yourself about your own skills and resources. Are you comfortable working with electrical systems? Do you have the tools you need? Are you prepared to troubleshoot problems?
Yeah, you need to be realistic about the time and effort involved too.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And finally, I can't stress enough the value of community. Connect with other DIYers, learn from their experiences, and share your own findings.
That's one of the best things about the DIY community, the willingness to help each other out.
Absolutely. Now, before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a question to think about.
Okay.
Knowing what we now know about this easy DIY power plan, what criteria are most important to you when evaluating any DIY energy solution?
That's a good question. Is it cost effectiveness, ease of implementation, safety, reliability, environmental impact?
It could be any or all of those things.
Right. It's about finding the solution that best fits your individual needs and values.
And that's something we'll explore further when we look at some alternative DIY energy solutions in our next segment.
Sounds good. We'll be right back after a quick break.
Sounds good. You know, it's really inspiring to see how passionate people are about DIY energy.
Yeah, for sure.
This review we've been talking about actually came from an online forum where people are constantly sharing their projects and ideas.
It's amazing how much knowledge and experience is out there.
It really is, and people are so willing to help each other out.
Exactly. It's like a global community of DIY enthusiasts all working together.
And it's not just about sharing successes either.
Right. People are open about their mistakes, too.
Which is so valuable, because we can all learn from each other's setbacks.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all part of the learning process.
Speaking of learning from setbacks,
Yeah.
I remember one time I was trying to build a solar oven.
Oh, wow. A solar oven. That sounds ambitious.
Yeah, well, I had this idea that I could use it to cook food in my backyard.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Harnessing the power of the sun.
Yeah.
So I found some plans online, and I started gathering materials.
Okay.
But I ran into a problem right away.
Uh-oh.
What
Didn't
happened?
find a reflector panel big enough. Ah, yeah. That's kind of essential for a solar oven.
It is. So I had to improvise. I ended up using a bunch of smaller mirrors that I glued together.
Wow. That's pretty resourceful.
Thanks. It wasn't perfect, but it actually worked.
That's awesome. It's so satisfying when you can overcome those challenges and make something work.
It really is. And, it's those moments of problem solving that make DIY so rewarding.
Exactly. It's not always about following the instructions perfectly. Sometimes you have to think outside the box.
And those are the times when you learn the most.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So for anyone out there who's thinking about trying a DIY energy project, don't be afraid to experiment.
Yeah. And don't give up if you hit a snag.
There's always a solution out there. You just have to be creative and persistent.
Hey, remember, you're not alone. There's a whole community of DIYers out there who are happy to help.
It's true. And together, we can create a more sustainable future.
Well said. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the Easy DIY Power Plan,
We hope you learned something new.
and that you're feeling inspired to explore the world of DIY energy.
Until next time, keep innovating and keep those sparks flying.
Take care, everyone.